Yes, my friends, it is finally time. In this video, we're going to discover the new Samsung Galaxy S24. We're talking about the base model in the 2024 flagship lineup, a phone that has very high-end components, but also a fairly reasonable price. We're going to take it out of the box, review all of its components, and put it against different phones from the competition to find out if it's really worth it. As you can see, the box it comes in is fairly simple, and it is also fairly small, which is unfortunately the case with pretty much every phone box in 2024. When you open it up, you find the S24 covered in a protective plastic sheet, a USB-C to USB-C cable, and also the typical instructions and manuals that explain how to use the phone. Unfortunately, we get no headphones, and we get no wall brick. Which is funny because Samsung promotes the S24 alongside their new 45-watt charger. That allows you to get the phone from 0 to 100 in less than an hour. But when you open the box, it's not there. The only way you can get it for free is if you get the phone through the Amazon link that I left in the description, mainly because it is cheaper than in other websites, so you can use the leftover money to get the charger. If at the end of the video you want to get the S24, remember to click that link. As you can see, my unit has the new graphite color, which is basically a light gray tint, and that, in my opinion, looks way better than the dirtier, darker gray on the S24 Ultra. But if you don't like it, you can also get it in yellow, black, or purple. As it's been the case for the past couple of years, this phone is very well built, with simple but elegant lines and, of course, high-end materials worthy of a flagship phone. It has aluminum on the side frames and glass in the front and back panels. Although, as you can see, the design is almost identical to the one on the S23, with only one small difference, which is that the S24 now has slightly flatter sides, kind of like the ones we can find on the iPhone. Wink wink, Samsung. And that, in my opinion, do look better at a first glance, but I'm not sure about ergonomics. Flat sides tend to be a little bit rougher on the hand. The only thing that I didn't like about it was that the volume buttons, the power button, the USB-C port, and the speakers are not located symmetrically, meaning they are not centered to the side of the frame, which I know, I'm aware. It's a stupid little detail that most people are not even going to pay attention to, but the way that I see it is the difference between a luxury device and a device. Then when it comes to the internal components, it obviously has the best of the best, the Snapdragon 8 Generation 3, optimized for Samsung. Pay close attention, my friends. This is not the normal Snapdragon Gen 3 like on the rest of the high-end phones. It has a version of this processor customized to get the most out of the S24. So, of course, it is as fast as it gets in the Android game. It even ties in a Geekbench test against the A17 Pro from Apple, which right now is the king of the hill. When it comes to my personal experience, the performance has been impeccable. It loads up every app and every game that I want in no time, and they all run like butter through a hot pan. I even decided to compare it against the iPhone 15 Pro, which technically is a better and more expensive phone, but that did not reflect in the results. As you can see, the S24 opened a ton of apps faster than the iPhone. Sure, even if it's for like a couple milliseconds, it is faster than a technically higher end, more expensive phone, which is very impressive. The only thing it lacks is a decent game catalog, like the one we can find on the new iPhone models, because sure, Genshin Impact and Call of Duty are great games, but Android still needs a lot of improvement to compete against a gaming console. If you think about it, it's kind of a shame. It's like 100 times more powerful than a Switch, but it doesn't have 1% of the game catalog, so please, Samsung, do something about it. What I did like about this phone, of course, are all of the new AI features it brings. As many of you know, we are in the middle of an AI revolution, and every year there are exponential changes happening in this field. So Samsung, as they should, decided to hop right into the AI bandwagon. With the new S24, we're going to be able to circle anything on the screen, and the phone will do an AI search and tell us exactly what it is we're looking at and where to buy it. We're going to be able to eliminate objects from any photo by simply touching those objects. We're going to be able to move those objects around the image as we please. And even better, we're going to be able to live translate a call to any language we want. This is something we could already see in the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro last year, but Samsung is taking it to the next level. If you're a geek like me, you will agree this is an exciting time to be alive. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about the battery life. Another very strong point on this phone. As you can see, I ran a very intense drain test on it, and it lasted about 8 hours and a half, more or less, which, without being revolutionary, it is more than enough for 99% of people. Funny enough, it was actually 5 minutes better than the iPhone 15. So yeah, technically all the Android fans watching this video can say that Samsung beats Apple in battery life. But well, let's be honest, my friends. 5 minutes is not enough to call it a winner. They are both very good. They both tie in battery life. And well, as it's been the case for a long time now, we can do wireless charging. We can do reverse wireless charging, which is actually turned off by default, and you have to activate it in the settings app every time you want to use it. And obviously we have fast charging up to 45 watts if you buy the separate wall brick. Click the link in the description. Cheaper S24, more money in your pocket so you can buy the 45-watt charger. But before that, let's talk about the display, another very strong point on this phone, because in this case it has everything, and everything is everything. 120 Hz LTPO panel, 2600 nits of brightness, and extremely thin frames. I have to say though, one of the quote-unquote downsides of this phone is that it has a 1080p display instead of a 1440p display like on the S24 Ultra. But after trying both phones and having them side by side, I can confidently tell you that it is not noticeable. On such a small display, having extra pixels is kind of pointless, because you could only notice the difference by using some kind of magnifying glass. The only real change is in battery life, because more pixels burn more battery life, so yeah, like, I don't think it would make sense for the S24 to have a high-resolution display. And of course, we also have to talk about the cameras on the phone, probably one of the most important components on any phone in 2024. I'm going to show you plenty photos from all of the cameras, but I wanted to show you the video capabilities first, because I believe we've gotten to a point now where you can use your phone to record a vlog or even a video on its own, substituting like a professional camera in some ways. Of course, it is not as good as a professional camera, but in some ways it kind of is. By the way, sorry for the noise, my neighbor's mowing the lawn right now. Worst timing ever, but I had to make the video right now. But more specifically, we have 3 cameras on the back of the S24. We get a 50 megapixel main sensor, we get a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, and we get a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. As always, let's begin by talking about the main sensor, which is pretty similar to the one we had last year. It is the same 50 megapixels, it is the same size, we have the same optics. The only change we can see is in the AI processing tools that Samsung uses to process the images. So we're gonna get a little bit more sharpness, we're gonna get a little bit more contrast, better colors, but the raw photos we're taking are identical to the ones on the S23, which is not a bad thing. The S23 had a very good camera. It is a big sensor with a lot of sharpness, we get a lot of dynamic range, and we have the optimal amount of megapixels. Then we have a 3x telephoto camera, which is the worst camera on the phone. You can really notice the difference between this 3x camera and the S24 Ultra's 5x camera. They are night and day. The S24 Ultra has a way better zoom camera. Even the 3x camera on the iPhone 15 Pro is it's way better. The 3x on the S24 is just, not to say bad, because it's not a bad camera, but it just doesn't feel premium. It doesn't feel like a camera on a $1,000 phone. It's just mediocre. And last but not least, we have an ultra wide camera, which is not mediocre. It is a pretty good ultra-wide camera. Probably my favorite camera on the S24, because without being as good as the main sensor, it is surprisingly close. We get a lot of detail, we get very, very good dynamic range, a lot of sharpness, and even though we still see a little bit of distortion on the side edges, it is way less than it used to be a couple of years ago. And then, of course, we get a bunch of video features on the camera of this phone. We can do 8K video recording, which, even though sure, it is not useful for the most part because the sensor is very small, so we don't really take advantage of that higher resolution. When you're making a video at broad daylight and you do have enough light, you can notice a sharper image and a better looking video. So That's great. We can also do, for the first time now, 4K video up to 120 FPS, meaning 4K slow-mo video, which is just incredibly pleasing to look at because not only it's smooth and slow, but it is high resolution. So yeah, the combination of those two things makes an insanely attractive and appealing video. And of course, we also have to talk about the selfie camera, which, without being as good as the other cameras because it's a little bit smaller, it retains most of the quality, especially the detail. This camera records 4K video. When have you seen a selfie camera recording 4K video? And it's very sharp. Of course, we're not going to get as much background blur. We're not going to get as much dynamic range because, as I said, it's a tiny sensor. But for anybody trying to get a good selfie camera to make TikToks or Instagram stories, this is pretty much as good as it gets right now. The only thing left is to give you a conclusion. Is the Samsung Galaxy S24 worth it? Well, I believe so, yes. I think it is worth the $900 price tag, and even though it is not a no-brainer decision, you still have the S23, you still have the Pixel 8, you still have a bunch of options that are great in their own way. The S24 is a very good deal. For $900, we get the best display on the market right now, we get very good materials, we get the best processor, we get very good battery life, we get insanely good cameras. So if you're looking to get a flagship phone at a reasonable price, meaning under $1,000, this is probably the Android King. This is the best deal you can get right now on the Android world for under $1,000. As I said earlier, you have a link in the description with an amazing price, and now that the video is about to end, I recommend you go take a look.